Hey Jeff. So you wanted to know how to make a triangle bug. This is one way to do it. There are other ways. This is one of the ways I do it. This is actually the one I prefer. Some people tie these rubber legs on instead of like a skirt. They'll put them up here coming out of the foam body, two of them pointing back, and then two sticking straight out to the sides. That works, but I like this a little better. So to get the shape, you need some craft foam. We use some craft fur later, and you cut out a diamond. I've got a little triangle bug cutter. You don't need one, you just cut out a diamond. If you haven't got any foam, give me a call and I'll cut you some bodies and you can tie some of your own and get creative with it. They sell a press for these cutters, but you don't really need it. Just mash them down on the little rubber pad that it came with. I've got one of those self-healing cutting mats on my workbench here. I'll cut out several bodies. And you just push down, rock back and forth, move it in each direction, and it cuts it out. Now the cutter leaves a little tab hanging off the back, and I didn't push down hard enough there, so it's a little bit fuzzy, but that's not going to matter. That tab is just there for convenience. It's not necessary, and I end up cutting them off. You can leave them on, but you don't need to. You need a hook. I'm going to use a Daiichi 2220, which is a 4x long, 1x strong streamer hook. And I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Stick it in there, mash the barb down, and pinch the hook in the vise. So you got your foam body that you've cut out, or I cut for you, whichever. You need that. For the way I'm tying them, you'll need some craft fur. You'll need some bucktail. Not the deer belly, the actual tail. The hair is not as hollow, and it's different. You're gonna need some dubbing, some thread, and some rubber legs or silicone legs. And if you want to, you can wax that thread before you stick it on, help it grip a little bit better as you're tying in. Put it on the hook half or 3/4 of the way towards the eye. Oh, and you'll need some chenille. You remember that stuff, the little fuzzy stuff stuck in between two threads? This is pretty much just to grip the glue. Attach that with a pinch wrap or 3, and then just spiral it on up. And stay a hook eye length back from the eye. And then just trim that back there. All right. So, start with the tail. Cut off some bucktail. You don't need a whole lot. You can do this with just bucktail. Get out the fuzzy bits. There's not much there. We'll go a hook length and a half, which means I'm going to cut it right about there. Do this over a trash can. I've got a little bin that sits on my desk, a little cloth bag basically. But you want to keep your tying desk neat. That way you don't get stuff stuck to the foam when you cut it, and when you're done tying, and it makes cleanup easier, and your mom doesn't go mental because you've got deer parts and synthetic fur all over her table. Take that craft fur, and you don't need a whole lot, but you don't. This stuff's kind of funny. It's got great action in the water because it's so fine. You're going to cut basically a 1-inch square patch off of the hide. It's like carpet. I don't know if you can see the backing there. Yeah, it's like carpet. So you just cut a 1-inch square patch off of that. I keep a little shaving soap container with a little round sponge in it to wet materials with when I remember not to lick them. And that evidently had some red in there because it's turned that pink, but that's okay. And then you're going to pull out the long ones. This just kind of keeps everything together. You pull some out, you want to maintain a taper, but there you go, that's a little better. This stuff will stick to your fingers when it's wet, boy. And then you just make that as long as your tail. So that makes getting the proportion on that a lot easier. All right, you can do that better than I did. See how it's got that little tag end sticking up right there? If you cut this way, it'll cut that off. I'll just trim a little more. If you cut straight, it'll leave that little tag on there almost every time, and you don't really need or want that. It won't do any harm on something like this, but you don't need it, so I have it. So there you go. You make that as long as or slightly longer than your bucktail. And then you want a little flash, so we'll get a little flash. You can use crystal flash. That looks really good on these. I'm using this holographic Flashaboo like stuff that I bought off of Amazon. I'm going to take that, wet it so it sticks together, double it, cut that at the bend, and then do the same thing again. And then I will attach that on my side of the hook with a couple, maybe 3 turns, wrap it over the top, catch it with the thread, and then attach it on the far side of the hook. One of the nice things, I didn't tell you what kind of thread I was using because it kind of doesn't matter. Having said that, I of course have an opinion on what I use and reasons why. I'm using UTC 140 denier, red thread, as you can see. I go with the 140. You don't really need a ton of strength on this. You're just holding on the tail materials basically, and you're gonna tie the foam down at one point. But I went with the 140 over 70 because it's a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, right? So it won't cut through the foam that we're gonna use or these rubber legs quite as easily. It still will, so you can't just crank down on it. You've got to put a couple of loose wraps on first, and then you can start applying some more tension. But the 140, you don't have to be as careful as you do with the 70, and also you don't tend to break it as much. Rubber legs. A lot of people tie them in between the fold of the body. Grab one. They'll tie them in up here before they glue the body pieces together. I tie them in more like a skirt. I did it one time, the fish seemed to like it, so I've kept doing it. I like the way it looks. I bought these in a great big honkin' pack. This is a small bag now, but it was quite a big bag when I got it for 20 bucks on Amazon years ago. You can still get deals like that. There's all different colors, and there are flat and round ones in there. And same thing with this this flash. I got a whole big bag of that stuff. You know, the name brand stuff's nice, but if you're working on a budget, the fish are just gonna put it in their mouth, dude. So I take these two strands, double them, cut them, and then tie them in at the center roughly. A couple loose wraps. Take the ones going forward, bend them over, pull them back, and tie them in back there. More loose wraps, and then getting tighter as I go. If you go too tight, you will cut it, and then they'll fall off, and then the fish won't be able to put them in their mouth. And so that's a whole tail there. Some of this stuff is longer than it needs to be, so I'll just come in and trim. You were asking me about spending money. The simple best answer is don't. Save your money. But you're a young fella and you're enjoying your hobby, and there's nothing wrong with spending a little bit of money on things you enjoy. That's part of why you work, right? So I wouldn't go buying any more scissors. You don't really need them. You've got this pair, and they're fantastic. I have over the years bought a lot of scissors. The ones I use frequently I keep on my desk. That's not a pair of scissors. And I've got uses for all of them. And those other two you saw. But 95 or possibly more % of the time, I use these 4-inch all-purpose Dr. Slicks because they're fantastic. They work really well. They stay sharp for a long time. I've got a pair that's 20-some years old. These are 2 or 3 years old, and they're still very sharp. One of the ways you can check and see if you got a good sharp pair of scissors is to get some thread, let it hang, and just cut it. And if it cuts freely and easily like that, free hanging thread, that's a good sharp pair of scissors. And you know they're a good pair of scissors if they do that for over a long period of time. And these do. They'll stay that way if you don't accidentally try to cut the hook or go cutting wire with them. For that, use a pair of dikes. I use either a pair of dikes or these old Orvis scissors. I bought these because they have adjustable loops, and I've got my fingers are all mangled up from years of work, but I've got some opinions on scissors. I love these things, man. They're sharp, they cut great. I really don't like the fat plastic finger loops. They don't fit my fingers very well. They put them at funny angles, and they're kind of bulky in my hand. I tie with scissors in my hand because that's the way I learned, and I don't like to tie with them in my hands. This is a pair of scissors that's the same length that I use quite a bit for hair, and they're great. They have a different shape in the loops than the Dr. Slick, but they fit in my hand just great. They're razor scissors, and they have adjustable tension, and they're like 20 bucks. I haven't had them a long time, so I can't say that they're durable yet, but I'll find out. They probably will last a long time because I use these all the time. I've got curved scissors for deer hair, for trimming bugs. They're great, but they're not practical for the majority of my tying. I went and bought some fancy Dr. Slick Arrow Point razor scissors. They've got see these little cutouts right here. You can supposedly cut wire with those if you open them up wide enough like that. I haven't tried because I have tools for that. And they've got really fine points, right? But they're kind of thick. Those all-purpose ones are thinner, and the thinner the blades of the scissors are, the closer you can get to the hook and trim things. So I like them. I love the loops. They fit my hands real well, but they're fat and they're short, and I stick my thumb on those really pointy tips, and I don't like that. These are nice and thin. They have really fine points. They have adjustable finger loops, so I adjusted them so that I like them, but same thing, they're kind of short. Cut my finger on them. These are anvils. They're not super expensive, but they're hard to get. I don't know why. They make a range of scissors. That's the only pair of theirs I have. I've got some Tiemco synthetic scissors that are great for cutting synthetic materials like craft fur and mylar and all that, but they've got the fat plastic loops, and there we are again. There's nothing wrong with those loops. It's a Goldilocks thing. I happen to like these better, you know. So these are the ones I use. and they're inexpensive and they work well for a long time, so that works for me. So don't spend your money on tools. You've got the tools you need. Spend some time learning how to use them, getting better with them, and then maybe go spend some money. Maybe if you get into the hair bugs, buy a hair packer. They're good to have. There's different kinds. That one's good, but I tend to break hooks with it because I can get a really good grip on it, push real hard, and then I break the hook and stick myself in the finger. And there's other kinds, and I'm thinking about getting a different one day, but usually I just push the hair back with my fingers. That works pretty well, surprisingly. So yeah, buy lots of different colors of bucktail, buy lots of different feathers, get some deer belly hair, get different colors of thread and wire. There's an amazing array out there of things that you can buy. You might spend your money on other bobbins. I've got like this right bobbin here. That's a regular. I've got a couple of them. I've got a couple of these ceramic magnums that I use when I've really got to crank down on some deer hair. I'd like them better if they were steel all the way up instead of that ceramic tube. I think the steel lasts longer without getting a notch in it, getting scored. That'll end up cutting the thread. I've got one of their half-hitch ones. I like that pretty well, but I think it's got a nick in it and it's fraying my thread. One of the ones I use the most is this Tiemco. Now this one was a little bit expensive. I think it was like $40, but it's a nice little all-purpose bobbin. Fits in the hand well, even when you've got scissors in your hand. Again, I'd like it better if it wasn't ceramic, but that's just me. You can go half that price and get a fantastic bobbin from Loon. These Ergo bobbins, or Ergo all-purpose, are great. They've got a spot for you to put your thumb. See that little cutout that lays in there nicely. The first joint of your index finger lays on there, and they're really great. I've got a couple of those in different colors. I bought one of their other style Ergo bobbins, and I don't really care for it. The tube is really long, and it's got these flat bars instead of the wire legs to hold the bobbin in there, and it's just not as comfortable in my hand. It's a little more bulky. The bars were kind of sharp, that the legs. I sanded them down. I just like the other ones better. And I've got one on my desk. Anyway, I've got a bunch of them. I've used them over the years quite a bit. One of those Dr. Slick ceramic insert bobbins. They're pretty good, but they have a fatal flaw. I use them for lead-free wire. The flaw is that the ceramic insert is actually two ceramic inserts. There's one at the end of the barrel, and then there's one at the bottom, right? I always knock those out with bobbin threaders. Always. I've been using them for 30 years, and it's the same, well, I guess about that long. I don't know, maybe not that long, but I've been tying for 30 years, and I've been using their tools for a long time, and I've had the same issue with every single one I bought. So I quit buying them, and I basically only use them for wire. The upside of the full ceramic insert, like on this one, is that you can't really knock it out with a bobbin threader. Again, I prefer the steel tube. But I say to get an extra bobbin or two, because then you can have different colors and sizes of threads already loaded up and ready to go. And sometimes when you're tying a fly, like with a deer hair popper or Dalbert diver or something, you tie on the tail materials with one thread like this stuff, and then you come back with some GSP to tie down that hair. It's got a much higher breaking strength, and it's flat and wide, so it doesn't cut the hair as easily. It will still cut it, but not as easily. But yeah, materials and another bobbin or two. And if you just absolutely have to spend some money, take that Debbie out. She was kind of cute. Seemed like a nice girl. Okay, so we have bucktail, we have craft fur, we've got the flashaboo, we've got the rubber legs. Pretty much all that's left is the foam and a little dubbing. Now the foam body, That one wasn't a perfect cut. It's not that big, and I can actually just trim that. What you do with this, whether it's pre-cut or you cut it, fold it in half so that the edges line up, like so. Take your pair of scissors, and with the point, find the center of the face and stick one of the blades in there and wiggle it around a little bit, okay? And then take the side that you punctured and stick it on. And then take some glue. I'm using some super glue. Here's another tip. When you open a bottle of this, get some chapstick or some kind of lip balm, scrape a little bit off on your thumb, and coat this this barrel that sticks up the threads or whatever, however the bottle's designed. That'll keep the glue from bonding the cap to the bottle. It comes off nice and easy, and you don't get a bunch of glue buildup in there. It's makes life a lot easier. So you take some glue and coat the bottom inside face of your piece of foam. Stick your brush back in the bottle, cap it, lift that up, and stick it against the hook a little bit. Give that glue a few seconds. All right, it's sort of stuck there. Now give it a couple of wraps with your thread, keeping that on there sort of plumb. Don't go crazy with the tension, just holding it on there. And then take some more glue and coat the inside upper face. You don't need to do both sides with that because you don't really want the glue squeezing out. And then squeeze it together and hold that. Give it a few seconds and it should begin to bond. Looks like I got that a little bit off center, but that's okay. And then take some wraps, sort of loose at first, and then applying pressure and tie that all down. You don't have to go crazy. At this point, if you've got one of the pre-cut foam bodies and it's got that little tab sticking off, you can pull that up, get your scissors in there, trim it off. And don't worry about that piece sticking out. We're going to cover it up with our dubbing. And this is pretty much the sole purpose of this dubbing, is covering up that joint between the body and the tail. Get some dubbing. If you're using the imitation seal like I'm using, you're going to want a little wax. That'll be all right. Put the wax on your fingers or on the thread or both. I say you want a little wax because this stuff doesn't go on as easily as like that superfine. I think that stuff is superfine because of how easy it is to use, not just the diameter. But with a well-waxed thread and some fingers, you get a good little dubbing noodle going. You don't need to put on a lot like I've done there. Just a little bit. It's too much, so I'm going to pull some of it down and spread it out. Alright. And then wind that on there and cover up all your thread work. Try not to catch the dubbing on the point of the hook. Okay. Now you can take some more of this, maybe that much, kind of spread it all around, take a turn or two, and then fold the stuff going forward, fold it back, take a few turns, and make sure everything's square. That just gives you another, I've got a little piece of deer hair in there, pluck that out. It gives you a little more action in the water as it moves. It'll kind of pulse around it like one of those soft tackles. Looks kind of cool. And then tie everything off. You can do that with a whip finish. You can use your tool, or you can whip finish with your fingers. And you do that by making a loop, crossing over, and just wrapping that around. We'll give that 4. Get it nice and tight. Do another one. Whip finish is only as good, or is only good if you tighten it down. And there you go. You can put some glue in there if you want to. I don't, because I tend to lose them or give them to some kid that walks up to me on the lake and says, "Hey, mister, how you catching all them fish?" And they attract everything, man. I've caught so many different species on these things, but they get chewed up. The whole point of the triangle bug is that it's got a narrow waist so that you can get a good hookup. You know, you've got that big gap there, but it's got enough shoulder on it to move some water, okay? You can tie them a little bit farther up on the hook. I like to put weed guards on some of them afterwards. I leave some of them without, because I still haven't decided if a weedless hook is a fishless hook. But anyhow, that's how I do them. And on these, I give them a little red stripe on the front. It could be a frog. Somehow it could be a fish. Who knows what the fish are seeing when they see this. You can decorate it up as much as you want to. It's your fly. But that's how I tie them. And there you go. If you have any other questions, let me know. There's lots of videos out there. You don't need me to make you a video for every fly you want to learn. I've learned most of my flies that I use nowadays from books and videos. Books are another great thing for you to spend your money on. There are books just for panfish, sunfishes. I've got a book of bass flies. You know, not every book out there on fly fishing is about casting or trout. But if you do have some questions, let me know. Hope I helped.